Then I close the door. Hey, walang limaji. Hi guys, welcome to another conversation with me, Thule, and
myself, Ayanda, also known as Yaya.
Yes, and we are inner conversators. We are tackling one conversation at a time, of course, talking about those little things that give us a hard time. Sometimes give us joy, but I mean, this is another episode of something interesting. And today, Aya is going to. Did I just call you Aya?
Girl, I'm so many things at this point. I'm Ayanda, Aya, I'm Yaya. Okay, cool.
Should we start again?
No. No, friend, we're here, and we're still gonna air this. We're still gonna air it.
Never.
We are. We're gonna.
Calling me
I
Aya.
got y'all. We're gonna air it. Guys, can you guys just please give us feedback on last week's video when we were talking about what it's like hearing from God?
Yeah.
What does it mean? How do some of you guys hear God's voice? Can you just share in the comment section, because your input can really resonate with someone else and it can really inspire them to just kind of really buffer their relationship with God in terms of how they hear God.
And of course, don't forget to subscribe on Instagram, on Facebook, and yes, on YouTube. We are Inner Conversations. And of course, in all three platforms, you can subscribe. And don't forget to tell your friends to tell their friends and their friends' friends. And
yeah, because I mean, like, it's like really nice conversations. Like, we're speaking about things that are important.
Of course, and trying to grow while we grow with you together, so we're all growing. But of course, without wasting any time, Yaya is going to tell us about the conversation we're having today at hand, right now.
Yes.
Which is?
Friend, I'm so excited about this conversation today.
Me too.
We're going to be speaking about... You ready? Mm-hmm. Is you sure you're ready?
Yeah, no, me's ready. I stays ready, girl.
Are you in the season of being ready? Hey, friend?
All the time.
Okay, cool. That's good, because we're going to be speaking about seasons in our lives. We're going to be speaking about some of the amazing, really happy seasons, some of the seasons that are just not so amazing, and also just like the dynamics around the seasons. Like, how do you feel when you're going through a really difficult season, but someone else around you is going through an amazing season? Can get like a little bit awkward. Or when you're going through in a really amazing season and someone else that's really close to you is not sharing the same sentiment. What happens? Like, what's up with these seasons, basically?
Well, I mean, I think it's very natural, right? To envy someone when they're flourishing next to you, looking all great.
Especially if you've been praying for that thing. You've been in the business of praying.
Yes, and trusting God about something for a very, very long time. And of course, I mean, God's timing falls out of the time that we as human beings operate in, whether it's 24 hours or 12 months in a year, or I mean, however long. So God does not have a time frame. He does not operate.
Which is also kind of weird,
time.
girlfriend, because I mean, like, it's like God doesn't have a time frame, but like we have time frames.
No, of course. I mean, that's the other thing. I don't think in the spiritual realm there is a position of time in terms of what God has planned with our lives. To say, for instance, I mean, we have a set plan for our lives, right? Like, we have a whole blueprint about, okay, so when I'm 30, I should have a house, I should have gotten married, I should have done this and that.
I'm like my 5th baby.
Right, and some of us haven't even started. So, I mean, that's like the other thing, right? So, like, God has another plan for us. I mean, of course we have plans, and that is why even in his word where he says, many are the plans in our hearts, but his will prevails at the end of the day. And I feel like we always see people flourishing at a certain point in time, and we never actually look in retrospect whether those people in their past seasons, they've gone through hardships, sufferings that they didn't share or did share, and now this is their time to flourish. You always see the final product. It's almost like, when you're looking at someone going up, and you never know where they come from. And all you see is the final product of how good they look,
the flashing lights,
of course,
the glam lights,
the car they're driving,
the car,
where they live, the bank accounts,
the black card,
and of course we don't forget to look at how they look. And those rainy days, of course, they wouldn't flash all of that on social media, because that's not a good side. No one ever shares their bad days.
Do you not think we're also sort of in a culture right now where I think there's been so many conversations about this, where we all just kind of show the good side of our lives, whether it's on social media, sometimes even in real life. And I think that's something that you're kind of referring to when you say you don't know where people come from. Like, you don't know where someone's journey started. You weren't there in their hard work and sowing season, but you're out here witnessing their flourishing and reaping season, and it just looks so good. And sometimes, like, it can make you just feel like, but that's really not fair, because I've been waiting for a minute, But the thing is, like how you said, like, we don't always see when people go through the stages in their lives where they're really pulling themselves together, where they're working on their inner selves, and the struggles that they face, And it's the same with our lives. You might be going through a season that's really amazing, but most likely prior to that, there was a season that was not so amazing.
But I mean, friend, I want us to zoom into this whole season thing, right? How do we discern what season is it in our lives?
So like, what season you're in?
Is it summer? Is it winter? Is it spring? Is it autumn? Right? And
always summer.
I mean, look, kidding. You may be going through a winter right now, but trust me, I feel like those really hot seasons in our lives, like the winters in our lives, the autumns in our lives, are preparing us for our spring and our summer. But we need to do the work, and I feel like that's actually a very important season in your life, where you literally are sowing, and when you reap the results of your work during the winter season, what we actually should be doing is learn from ants, right? And I mean, I read that ants don't stop working. So what they do is work all year long. Literally, they work in winter, for summer, and for autumn, for spring. And what it means is that we could learn through a culture of not getting comfortable, that when things are good,
and instant gratification,
of course, right? So when things are good, you stay in that season, you think things are always going to be like that. And when you're in winter, you think things are good, things are never going to change, things will always be bad, I'm never going to see the light. But that is actually not true. And I think when we are praying for a spirit of discernment from God to make us understand what season is it in our lives, that we're able to then know what to do. You know that you're working in winter for enough storage that when summer comes, I mean, you probably won't work as hard, but you're not going to get comfortable in that season. And so even when autumn happens, you're not going to feel like, oh my gosh, my winter is coming, I'm running out. When spring comes, you are still able to feel like things are moving right along, to make us understand what season is it in our lives, that we're able to then know what to do. You know that you're working in winter for enough storage that when summer comes, I mean, you probably won't work as hard, but you're not going to get comfortable in that season. And so even when autumn happens, you're not going to feel like, oh my gosh, my winter is coming, I'm running out. When spring comes, you are still able to feel like things are moving right along as they should.
Yeah.
You're not under pressure to
because you prepared yourself
to meet deadlines and to meet people's standards.
Yeah.
And succumb to people's pressure and culture.
Yeah.
I feel like pop culture has kind of also just put us so much pressure on us to look good all the time. You know, like posting our heart is full and love lives here.
Love lives here, relationship goals, and all these things that look amazing.
Of course.
So, friend, what are some of you know, like, I think a lot of the conversations that a lot of us have is things we've literally all spoken about. And I think if you're within a certain age bracket, it's things that you're also aware of. Like, okay, cool, I'm aware that there's seasons and I'm aware that there's a timing for everything, right? But what are some of the deeper conversations that we ought to be having? For example, what's the caliber of work that you need to go through while, say, for example, you're in a winter season? What does that look like? Like, are there different categories of it? Let's say, for example, if you're going through a winter season in relationships, it's just like tricky for you in relationships.
It cannot
like
be tricky, friend, though. It really cannot be tricky. It cannot be tricky because I feel like you need to do the work, take out all the tools that you need to be able to flourish.
What's the work and what's the tools?
So, for instance, if we take an example for relationships, right? I feel like self-love is the tool right there. That's where we start. And we are then in conversation with ourselves to ask ourselves, what are the deepest fears that we have about love? What is it that we need to deal with that has to do with our own insecurities that we think we're going to find outside of self? I feel like there's nothing that is outside of self that can actually fill the void inside. Everything that we need to succeed, everything that we need to feel like life is going well is literally within ourselves.
Yeah.
And God has provided that inside us. Like every single thing that we need is inside of us and not outside self. If it's validation that we need, if it's love that we need, if it's security that we need, if it's even just telling yourself that you're beautiful.
Yeah.
That needs to come from within. No one else, nothing else can give you that. The tools to do that literally is just to face who you are, the person that you see in the mirror every single day.
I don't know. Like, I think I'm struggling with a lot of words, right? That we all understand, but like, what's the practicality of it, friend? Like what's the practicality of me loving myself? Does it mean that I must look in the mirror and be like, girl, you was fly? Does it mean that I must look into my life and face some of like my pain and my hurt? Does it mean that I must take myself on like dates? Does it mean that I must get a caliber of a man that's gonna love me in a different way? Does it mean that I need to, like, what does it mean, like, when you speak about self-love? Like, what's some of the work, you know? And I think for me, I found that there's so many cycles to it, friend. Like, I remember last year, right, going through what felt like an exam, like a life exam. And I didn't know I was writing this exam until like half the paper, right?
Was it paper one?
I think it was like paper 1 of like 1,000. And like halfway through, I was like, okay, cool, this is some type of test. Okay, cool. And then when I realized it was a test, I got my act together. I started sewing into myself. I started speaking the right things to myself, using my mind and my imagination to attract goodness and just changing my vocabulary to reflect the things that I want, right?
Absolutely.
And it worked. It worked so well. It was like amazing, right? But then I realized something about seasons is that once you get the hang of something, you enter into a season that requires a little bit more.
Yeah.
So even though I did all the inside work, when I was faced with other situations later in the year, it required so much more, and it required a more specialized version of me sewing into myself. So it's like going through the same cycle, just in a different, more intense way, you know? So like for me, it also just kind of felt like what's up with life, because I did the work. I thought if I do the work, the thing happens. And I came to realize, like, sometimes you have to do the work and do the work and do the work and keep doing the work. And sometimes without there being a thing that you see to show for your work, but just still believing that what I'm doing is getting me somewhere. On the inside, I am transforming, even though you might not see it, even though my work might not reflect it, or my relationship might not reflect it. Inside of me is where the hard work is. And yeah, I learned a lot about endurance and just keeping the momentum going through different seasons, even though you don't see anything happening. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's so important to draw from real life experiences. When I lost my job, I was like, okay, God, what is this? What season is this? I mean, is it like a winter? What is it? You know, I mean,
like autumn.
Couldn't understand.
Autumn, winter.
If anything, I just
pitch black.
It went from one day of summer to a day in winter.
Yeah.
And I could swear I felt like my whole world was crumbling down. But here's what it is, right? So you talk about tools, and I feel like there's different avenues to be used to gain the most fruitful part of the journey, right? So I feel like, first of all, what we always talk about, prayer. So what are we getting from prayer? I feel like you're getting insight.
Yeah.
You're going into God's confidence about your plan. What is it that needs to happen now? Okay, so I lose my job. God, what is it that you want me to do? Because I've lost my source of income. I've lost my livelihood. I've lost a part of my life that I thought would continue longer than I thought it would.
Yeah.
And so he says, listen, child, I've given you talent. I do provide according to your needs. But I need you to trust me enough to think that whatever that I've given you, your talents, your skills, that you're going to use that to be able to sustain you until such a time that I tell you to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So, friend, you spoke about exams, right? So, life will play itself out in a way that is mysterious most of the time. And like you say, you never realize until you're in the middle of the exam that this is actually an exam. Like, whether you're writing paper 1 or 2 or 3, sometimes you get 5.
Like paper 5 and
right.
you only realize
you're like,
I've
been writing this exam. Why is it
like
not
10 years now?
until I pass. But the point is, you're gonna keep writing that exam until you pass.
Yeah.
But what is it that you need to do to pass is that you need to be able to understand what is it that you need to do. And I think the first step is to pray. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you need to tap inside of self and say, what is it about this situation that makes me uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Because you see, some of us are really comfortable in our relationships, in our jobs, with our friends, with whatever thing that is going right, that we never take time to introspect and say, what is it that God needs me to do beyond this, right? And what I learned from that experience, friend, I can tell you now, was that what you think you have is actually not the source. The source is God, right? So the job, the relationship, the friends, the connections, that's what God's love is, right? Like, it directs us in a position that doesn't allow us to drift away, even through our seasons.
Yeah.
And I feel like we need to stay put and our eyes set on Him.
Yeah. Friend, let me ask you something. What season are you in right now?
Well, I feel like I'm in an autumn.
What's in autumn? Was there like a lot of leaves around?
Yeah, like things are falling. Things are like dryish.
Yeah.
I mean, the grass is still green. but there's patches of like, you know, dryness and like leaves are falling.
Yeah.
The trees, you know, as you're saying, the branches are going to lose their leaves at some point, and you're not going to understand if the leaves are going to grow again.
Yeah.
And it's been hard, I must say. I must admit how hard it's been, but I've had the greatest peace.
Why did you have peace?
Because I learned the hard way to surrender my will. I learned the hard way to...
So surrendering your will to God gave you peace?
Yeah.
Despite you being in autumn?
Yeah, so I stopped trying to control the situation. I said, you promised, one, that you'll never leave me nor forsake me.
Yeah.
And secondly, you said you are a God who is able to do that which is exceedingly and abundantly more than I could ever ask.
It's one of my favorite scriptures.
Or imagine.
Yeah.
So whatever I think that God is about to do right now, He's gonna do tenfold.
I literally always tell God, I'm always like,
Yeah.
you know, I've got a wild imagination. So I use that scripture to my advantage. I'm like, I've imagined a lot. So when you tell me that you're going to do exceedingly abundantly more than I can ask or imagine, I just want you to know that my imagination is very high.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, it's very important for us to, especially when you're in a season where you feel like things are dry, there's literally nothing happening, there's nothing moving. You think of the abundance of God's provision.
Yeah.
You will see it. Like, I'm telling you now, I have never gone to bed hungry.
Yeah.
I have not lacked anything that I've needed, not wanted, needed.
Yeah.
And He's provided as He has promised that He would.
As He says He would.
As He said He would, He has provided.
He's a very faithful God, and I think that's something that I've learned from my journey with Him. I think I've been going through. I think I came from like an ice winter.
Was it like out there in the Boondoos?
Child, I think it was like in the North Pole itself.
Yeah.
Like I got from like an ice winter.
Antarctica.
And then the ice winter was like, okay, cool. I'ma just like morph into like an autumn. Didn't go from like winter to summer. I was like, really? So I went from like hard season to hard season. And only now am I starting to like, only now like are the autumn leaves starting to like turn a little green. And like the grass is just like a little healthier, you know. And it's not even because like things are going my way now, but it's like you're saying, just surrendering your will to God. Like since I stopped fighting the process, like since God told me this is what I want you to do, like since I stopped fighting the process and just wanting my own way, God just gives me the strength. You know, there's a scripture that says, what does it say? It says, those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength, right? And it's just the exact same thing.
They just keep going higher.
Exactly.
And higher.
Exactly.
And higher.
And it's the same thing. It's not like there's like these amazing changes. I'm still waiting on God to prove so much to me, but I have so much faith that He will. And even in my wait, He just keeps on giving me more faith and more strength. You know, and it's such a beautiful thing. Like I just love God, like with everything.
I want to tap into two things here that you mentioned. I want to tap into the weight.
Yeah.
That's the one bit of it. But I want to tap into the trusting of the process, right? What are you doing, friend, during the waiting process? And how is it that you are able to say to yourself, I'm trusting the process? Where is trust beginning to feel feasible?
That's a very difficult question. So, you know, trusting the process. Okay, oh my gosh, I'm gonna give an example. So the Lord asked me to do something sometime last year, right?
Yeah.
Actually, no. I'm getting it all mixed up. I was doing something like work related, so like in my professional life, and I remember telling God, Lord, this just does not feel like it's for me. Like I just don't really resonate with this. If anyone knows me or doesn't know me, so I studied law. I studied a BCom law, and since last year I was serving my articles. And I remember just telling God, like, something just ain't right here. Like,
I'm not supposed to be a lawyer.
Listen, like, and it was such a peaceful thing. It wasn't even fighting me. Like, no, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. It's just like a very peaceful approach. Like, no, your destiny lies somewhere else, you know. And I remember telling God that, and I remember God saying, okay, cool. And then I remember God asking me to do something that was just like totally 360 from what I thought he was gonna ask me to do. And I was like, Lord, if this does not work out, I hope you know that my whole professional career is going to be screwed. Like, he told me to do something that's outside of law and focus on the thing that he said I must do. And I was just like, listen, this is some type of extra faith.
I can't uneasy God.
I was like uneasy a lot, but then eventually I accepted and I did it. There was this weird window period, friend. So scary.
What are you doing during this window period?
There was this weird window period, like from my comfort zone of being in a profession that at least has some type of hope for me, and being or doing what God wants me to do. There was like a sort of window period where God was just not saying much, and I had already done the things that God said I must do, and I couldn't go back. And God was just like silent, and I was like,
but God, where are you?
You know, so that was a weight, friend. That was not an ordinary weight, but a weight of anxiety and a weight of panic. Like, you said I must do that, and I did that, and now you know it to be fine. I don't know what's going on, you know? But I, like, in the weight, all I could do was trust the character of God. There was nothing I could do, friend. There was nothing I could do. I prayed so much. I
like that.
I prayed so much, but I just had to tell myself, if God is real, they say that he's faithful. They say that he's a way maker. They say that he's a promise keeper. You know, so I just had to trust the character of God. Sure. Outside of everything that was happening, I had to trust that God, he's a way maker, he's a promise keeper, and knowing him who swears by only his own name, like God will keep a promise only if he promises himself something.
Yeah.
I had to trust that God is the one that's gonna come and get me where he left me. And he did, you know, he obviously because I mean that's what he does. So yeah, so the weight sometimes just looks like trusting who God says he is. Yeah.
I mean, I love what you did there. And for me, what I am sensing in my spirit is when you look at what God has done, right? Literally, like, look at when you were born. In fact, even way before.
Yeah.
How many siblings, before your unknown siblings, you were competing with, right?
Yeah.
To basically make it, you are the one that made it.
Yeah.
And you made it. And you stayed in your mom's womb for 9 months and you made it
out,
and you were born and you made it. And I mean, like, however old you are right now, you are alive.
Yeah.
I feel like every single breath that we take is a promise from God to say, I haven't forgotten about you. Every single day is God saying it's not over.
Yeah.
And I feel like when he says in the wait, or rather when, as you say, as you collate it, that you say, God didn't say much. I feel like that's even a word right there where he's like, be still and know that I am God, right?
And sometimes that's all you can do. Sometimes, like, there's only so much praying you can do about a thing.
Yeah.
Only so much consulting you can do with your pastor or your friends. Like, sometimes God just wants you to wait.
And friend, he's not God because of the things that he does.
Why is he God?
No, what I'm saying is he's not God because he does things for us. He is just God.
What does that mean?
So what I mean is, he remains God, regardless of whether we think he's made up to the standards that we think
That is true.
God has to meet up to, right? So God has to make sure that I have food on my table. God has to make sure that I have that man. God has to make sure that I drive that car, that I live in that house. He still is God. And because he operates on the basis that he is God, he's not going to do anything, that we are pressurizing him for.
Yeah.
But secondly, that he's not going to do anything to prove that he's God.
Friend, you actually reminded me of something. There's this saying, right? I think it was by Sarah Jakes.
Yeah.
Sarah Jakes Roberts on one of her sermons. I'm not sure. And she was saying something like, God is not intimidated by your fears. And God also doesn't act because of your fears. So just because you're scared, like, oh my gosh, God is so quiet and this thing is gonna happen. That's not gonna move God to act. No. God was gonna act because he was gonna act irrespective.
Yep.
Your fear literally does nothing. like in terms of coercing God to do something and to save the situation. God was gonna do that because he's a compassionate God and he's a merciful God, and he told you he was gonna do it.
And he's faithful.
And that's my favorite thing. He's so faithful.
What I want us to close out with, right? It's just a thought that I want to leave you out with. There's a song by Elevation that says he'll do it again, where there's a verse that says, I've seen him move, he's moved mountains.
Yeah.
And he's made a way where there was no way.
There was nothing.
And I know he will do it again. And if you're going through a summer, great, he's done it again. If you're going through
enjoy the summer, you know. If you're going through a summer, oh my God, honey,
immerse yourself.
Be so happy because you know what you went through before the summer. Just take everything in, take those sun rays in. Just share some of your summer as well with me.
Of course, we need it. And if you're going through a spring, listen here. I feel like you should just be able to open up yourself for anything surprising that God
spring is like a surprise. It's like good surprises, surprises that sometimes elevate you. You know, sometimes when you're in a good season, things become so comfortable. You have to motivate yourself to get elevated. Sometimes everything is just okay.
You just
family is fine. If you have kids, my kids are fine, my husband is fine, everything is fine.
How are you? I'm good.
You know, but sometimes when you're in a happy season, you also need to encourage yourself to kind of challenge yourself to do things that are not as easy, that are not as mundane, because that keeps you growing. And if something difficult comes your way, you've already got some practice. You weren't just slumbering and the enemy's I'm gonna say no temptation, because they don't know what's going on. So stay on your toes, bruh.
And play with those idle hands. Yeah. But for those like myself and Ayanda, we're going through a winter or an autumn, whichever one it is. In fact, for all seasons, there's one thing that will get you through all seasons of your life.
Which is?
In fact, gratitude multiplies things. Right? So where there's nothing, it will create something. And where there's something, it will create more. Yeah. So, in fact, what I want to close out with is to say, whatever season that you're in, just be grateful.
Be grateful, because also, like how you said, a breath in your lungs is so much of an opportunity for God to still reveal what he's going to do in your life, you know? Every single time we breathe, let it be a reminder that your life is not over. And if your life is not over, it means that the majestic God has an opportunity to do something in your life.
Something new all the time.
Something new. So whatever season you're in, just kind of embrace it. And also, in closing, I wanna just say, I've realized the enemy really plays on fear and anxiety and anticipation of something happening or something not happening. And most of the time, those things are really just lies. The enemy says that, the Bible says that the enemy, he's the founder and father of lies. And I've come to realize that sometimes we're so anxious over things that come to not even materialize at all. And it's such a waste of your energy. When you think about the fact that last week I was stressing about something that didn't even happen, that was a moment I could have been happy. I could have been peaceful in that moment, but but I can't even get it back because it's just gone, you know. So whenever fear and anxiety comes your way, just let it go. Just let it go to God, because it's a wasted opportunity to be peaceful and to be happy.
Amen.
Yeah.
Wow, what a beautiful, beautiful session we've had.
That was so much fun, friend. I think that really helped me as well. Like,
no, absolutely.
yeah.
See you next week. Don't forget to subscribe. Call your friends and their families, and your family and their friends, to come join us next week when we tackle another conversation
topic.
One conversation at a time. Peace.
Bye.